It's a great, great day. It's a good day. Get
Oh, yeah.
sunshine.
It is a great day. And we have so much sunshine here in Vancouver. I hope that you do too. Gosh, it is October 3rd right now. And we have like 20-degree weather here in Canada, which is like a total fluke for Vancouver. Usually we are like piled with rain by now. So we are soaking in every one of these days. Risers and Thrivers, I am happy to have you back. And we are happy to be back. Boy, do we have a show for you today. This topic, all about cancer, menopause, midlife, it's one that's incredibly close to my heart, just from my own personal experience as well. And I find this is somewhat of a taboo topic for a lot of people in the healthcare realm. And I'm really excited to be here today with this amazing Sylvia, and I'll introduce her in a sec, just to really open up the conversation all about it, from the struggles that we can all go through, and then just to sharing tools so that we can all live our healthiest and most vibrant lives through it all. So, and we're so lucky to have with us today Miss Sylvia Sunstrum from @Sassy with Style, and that she is. Sylvia is a breast cancer survivor. She is a motivational speaker. She's a social media influencer who inspires women to take control of their health and their wellness, and to do so through holistic measures to live a more vibrant life. We are here to have a really in-depth conversation. Sylvia, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Oh, we're so happy to have you here with us today. Can you tell me a little bit first, just to kind of start off the path? How did you start your career with motivational speaking?
Well, I always like to talk, sharing too much information. But I think it started in my career in dentistry. So when we have patients in the chair, you would be doing patient education around, the dental procedures, etc. And then I became a financial officer within the dental office as well. And then again, explaining insurances and payments and things like that. And then fast forward, probably about 10 years after that, I ended up taking my human resource management, staff development and training. So again, talking, and it just went from there. So I actually have done a few speaking engagements with regards to menopause in the workplace. So yeah.
Oh, good for you. Well, I love speaking and serving as an inspirational speaker. And, I used to speak previously as in my profession as a sports chiropractor. I would speak for the University of British Columbia and for different, communities here in Vancouver, just inspiring everyone to live their, attain their peak health, and absolutely loved it. And then after my own tumultuous, relentless health journey, we could say, I had been approached by various medical bodies who knew of my story to speak at, various medical conferences. And then it just really evolved from there, this idea of this inspirational and motivational speaking. And I just love it. I love being on stage and connecting with the audience, and leaving them with this palpable energy, and that you can really take away from those connections. I really enjoy it. And it's funny how sometimes life, you've gone through a few different careers, and myself as well. And it's funny how sometimes life circumstances propel us to being right where we needed to be all along. And I loved my career as a chiropractor, but gosh, I just love this career of speaking. It's been really rewarding. Anyhow, let's start it all off. So tell me, how did you get into this world of speaking on menopause and midlife, and helping and helping to empower and inspire other women?
By chance. So my mom had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer many years ago. She's been passed away for 16 years now. And at the time, I was just educating myself around what that was. The only person I had heard in conjunction with ovarian cancer was Gilda Radner. And again, just started researching what it was, what it meant. Ovarian cancer is known as the silent killer. There's no testing that can be done. There's no screening that can be done. There's some symptoms, but again, the symptoms can be masked as something else. And so just really educating myself and helping my mom go through this diagnosis. she ended up being put into palliative care, and the doctor said that he wanted to do a test on her regarding her gene, and that would help not her, but the family, so her children. And again, my mom said, sure. So my mom had passed, and then 2 years later, the test results came. So that was quite some time, again, 16 years ago. So they were testing for the BRCA gene mutation. So as women, we all have the BRCA gene. It's when the gene mutates that it becomes problematic. And so that meant that whoever was a carrier of the BRCA gene mutation, your chances of getting ovarian cancer and breast cancer were a lot higher than the average female populace. And so I ended up getting tested myself some years later. And I said, so what does this mean for me? And I became aware that I was positive. I was a carrier, so now what?
What did you feel then?
What did I feel when I was diagnosed? I was very cocky going into the blood test. I eat well. I've been eating well. I exercised. I did all the things, and no way in hell am I going to have this gene mutation. And then when the test results came back, I was shattered and humbled, obviously. You're not invincible.
Yes.
And so, and then so when the doctor said that I could do preventative things, and that would be a double mastectomy and a prophylactic hysterectomy or an oophorectomy. So that's the removal of your ovaries and fallopian tubes. I was 49 at the time. I wasn't planning on having any more kids. Ovarian cancer is a silent killer. That's what killed my mom. So I'm going to go ahead and have this preventative surgery done. Cancer prevention, all the things. Nowhere in my brain was the word menopause. Nobody discussed this with me.
That was never raised with you. Wow. That would be induced by that surgery. Wow.
And I had never had surgery before either on anything. So that was very stressful in itself. Our wombs are very associated with our feminine side and life living. And, nobody said, hey, you should maybe look, at counseling to heal after the surgery, things like that. So no. So yeah, it was a whole thing, especially with regards to the surgery-induced menopause. I mean, it was instantaneous. Like the next day, I couldn't really disseminate if I was sick from the general anesthetic or if I was sick from the actual menopause symptoms that were just coming at me nonstop. So, yeah.
I had a similar experience, to be honest, in a very different way, right? So I had been diagnosed with cancer and not breast cancer. I had a very aggressive and acute leukemia. And so I always thought from the outside looking into the breast cancer community that these topics would have been more discussed with you in advance, compared to the leukemia community where it's just not discussed at all. I was 35, right? I had already had 2 children, but these conversations never happened about menopause, about more children, about anything. And I understand that my treatment needed to start imminently. Right. But I still would have very much appreciated conversations about this. And I don't know, I experienced intense night sweats, and I experienced a lot of intense symptoms that I attributed to being associated with the chemotherapy at the time, right? This high degree of potent chemotherapy. And in retrospect, I have no idea really where it was coming from. But there's a good likelihood that it was coming from those menopausal-like symptoms. Because if you test me on a lab, gosh, for almost 9 years now, it looks like I'm like 95 years old. Like I am very, very, very postmenopausal, right? And that's not supposed to happen at the age of 36, right? And so and this is why I'm really excited to be discussing this today, because there are things that have helped me along the way. And I bet there are things that have helped you too from starting this process much earlier than we would have otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly like you said, having those conversations, even there is a library within the oncology area, and I went searching through there, anything I could find about previvorship and what that meant, and have other women gone through it. What were their decisions? Why did they do what they did? There was one book, one.
Yeah.
So, and again, we all have our own stories. We all have choices that we make. It's nice to be able to relate to somebody going through the same things that we're going through. But again, in the end, it's ultimately our decision what we want to do, right?
Of course. And then in survivorship, you're so lucky and so thankful to be alive. Yes. But that whole issue about that topic of femininity, like you just raised, that has been with me, and that has been challenged for me time and time and time again. You want to feel like your most feminine self, right? Cancer or not.
Yes.
And this is definitely a topic that needs much more discussion around it. And I've been quite a voice with the leukemia community, I say, and even in the transplant community, having had a double lung transplant and a bone marrow transplant, right? There are different symptoms that we experience completely differently than cancer from being immune suppressed and having that process, right? And so really, there are a lot of women that are going through these issues, and these healthcare communities in all these different forums, right? Whether you're a previvor, whether you're a survivor, whether you are, facing autoimmune issues or transplant, all of these different health layers do impact our women's health and that idea of femininity, right? I want to feel like this strong, powerful woman, right? And then that challenges me in different ways. And so over time, I've come up with different ways to navigate that, which we'll get into in a sec, but I'd love to hear about yours. So can you tell me, after that surgery, what were some of your symptoms that you were experiencing that caused you some distress?
The immediate symptoms were the hot flashes and the night sweats, immediate. Memory loss was horrible. I couldn't even ask the kids to pass the salt. They thought I was joking around when I said, that thing in front of you, it was horrible. And I still have some of residual, but I chalk that up to aging now. But so those were the two main ones. Anxiety, mood swings. Oh my God, my poor family, like mood swings, crazy. Hair loss again, due to the surgery, due to your ovaries being removed, due to the lack of estrogen, proestrogen. Hair loss was huge. There was a change in body odor. I used to sweat at the gym, no problem, come home, have a shower. Now it was like halfway through the day, I'd be like, what the heck? So those were some of the more, prevalent symptoms that I got immediately afterwards. Yeah.
And was your sleep impacted? Your weight? How did you notice those things?
Sleep for sure. Weight gain for sure. And again, the whole anxiety around, like I said, my focus was not getting cancer, and then this whole menopause thing was very new. I learned by speaking and interacting with others and exchanging information. I worked in a mostly female office, and I'd always ask around, like, did this happen to you? Did this happen to you? And they would just go, oh yeah, you'll be okay. You'll figure it out, or that's normal. And I'm just like, no, this isn't normal. I don't want to be like this,
Yeah. And how did you feel? Did you feel it aged you instantly?
Not necessarily aged me, but made me change. Like, I've always been very happy and outgoing and whatever. And I was really short-tempered, and I really had to control my emotions and hold a lot of it in. So, yeah.
And how long did all that last in an intense way?
The first year was horrible. The first year afterwards was absolutely horrible. So that was the most intense. And then it slowly started to dissipate, or I started to get control of it, or accept it, if you will, because I didn't really necessarily know any better. And again, the information that I was looking at wasn't very helpful to change or tweak things. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So all this prevention, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in October of 2020. And that's the time that things started to really change and click, because now I'm delving deep into the breast cancer and root cause and how can I tweak my diet? How can I incorporate things to support my hormones? How can I, support my immune system? How can I look at my metabolic rate? How, like, just really went back to school almost. And that's when things started changing. Incorporating intermittent fasting, huge. Never mind aerobic exercises. Intermittent fasting did it for me, and I changed my exercising, like way more weight bearing exercises. And yeah,
I saw on your Instagram you were promoting different strength exercises.
Yeah,
I
stretching.
really admired that. Even simple things, right, that we don't realize, like getting up and out of a chair. Oftentimes we go to use our hands to help support us to do so.
Yes.
Right? But over time, that'll lead to some pretty chronic weaknesses, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so not relying on our hands and just using our core and our glute
Yes.
muscles was so important. And I saw one of your videos, how you were encouraging women just to practice getting up off the floor.
Yes.
From a sit to stand position,
Yeah.
hands free, right? Might not be the most graceful, but it's such an important skill to
Yes.
keep up. And
Yes.
I really admired that.
Well, you would know this because as we get older and we lose our balance and we fall perhaps and then we break a hip, sometimes that recovery isn't good. Like people end up passing away after that because the rehab is just, it's not happening. So again, it's strength training so that you're stronger and more agile and more
100%.
resilient as you get older. Yeah.
100%. I'm a huge advocate of all of that because our bone density really decreases as soon as we take away estrogen. Mm-hmm. And I know that personally. And so my battle with bone density is further combined, not just by the lack of estrogen, but also by the high dose steroids that have saved my life, mm-hmm. right? I believe a high dose of steroids is considered to be 5. I've been on doses of 500. And so I'm now struggling in the aftermath of having osteoporosis at the age of 46 years young, right? And I still love to ski. I love to do all of these things that make me feel alive and that I fought so hard to get to do, right? But I'm very cognizant of the fact that I battle these 2 huge mountains of not having estrogen and having to take these high dose steroids still today, right? To keep my 2 transplants in check as an immune suppressant. And so I have a huge mountain to climb in terms of maintaining bone density. And I am not able to take estrogen orally. I've had 2 strokes with my lung transplant surgery. I've been very lucky. I never even knew I had them, but I've had 2 official cerebral infarcts. You can see them on MRI. So because of that high risk of stroke, I can't do those synthetic hormones because my risk of stroke would go up even more. And so I am very cognizant of doing these weight-bearing exercises, like you said, right? To keep strong, to keep agile. And the perk of doing these, even like I always recommend like a wobble board, mm-hmm. Starting by the wall, of course, and doing so maybe with a physio or somebody at first just to get used to it. But that wobble board really, what it does is how we respond to different terrain, let's say, as we're walking, right? That wobble board is really good to help us adapt very quickly, right? Yeah. And when we're, it all really comes down to this idea of proprioception, right? And how those ligaments and the tendons kind of react. But there's these proprioception receptors in the ligaments. And as we're practicing this, we can train those to fire really quickly.
Yeah, you're twitching, yeah. Right.
And so we respond to that change in terrain before we actually take a tumble, right? Because the hip fracture really is, well, it was a few years ago. I can't say in terms of leading stats. I haven't looked this up before the show today, but it was the leading cause of death, right? For women over 65, I believe. And it's not from the fracture itself, right? But it's from the complications that could arise from a surgery or just the impact of being immobile for so long. And you can shed clots or other things come from it, right? You lose your overall function, you lose your overall fitness from that hip fracture. So preserving our bones and keeping that at the forefront of our mind through menopause is super, super important. So I love how you encourage that on your platforms, right? To stay strong in the ways that we can. And those really simple ideas, because how many chairs do we get up out of every day, right? And just using our core muscles and our, our behinds and our quads and our hamstrings and everything else to propel us up out of that chair versus using our leverage for support and supporting ourselves.
Or don't even sit on a chair. I mean, when we
Yep.
were kids, we had one couch and the parents got the couch. We got the floor as kids.
Yeah.
And oftentimes my dad's 86 years old right now. I mean, and he's not doing great, but back in the day, he and I were on the floor because, my mom and my brother got the couch kind of thing. But yeah, like we were squatting, watching TV, like this, or sitting on the backs of your legs and leaning backwards, watching TV, like all those functional movements that we don't do anymore today and are so important for all of our joints, our ligaments, everything.
100%. And then even incorporating, like I'm all about exercising with our own body weight. I think that's really important before we add any like weights whatsoever. But even adding like what I like to do too for my bones, another proactive measure that I do, I have this weighted vest.
Yeah.
And so I'll put on this weighted vest and then I'll go for a walk.
Yeah.
Because the weighted vest adds, I think it's 15 pounds to my overall body weight. So that adds more impact and more stress and more response to my bones. So that'll help them maintain some density in the face of these two high mountains that I climb with lack of estrogen and these high dose steroids. But adding weights in these ways that you can, even like wrist weights.
Yes.
Right? Ankle weights. Those are really helpful. Just easy to implement ideas. Like it's not rocket science, but it needs to be at the forefront of our minds.
Small changes in habits can have huge impacts for sure. And it's a lifestyle change. It's not for a short time. It's for your lifestyle.
Of course. How did you feel like you took back that power and regained that femininity that you felt you lost after the surgery when you lost your womb, right? How did you regain that femininity back?
Different modalities, a little bit opening up myself to more spirituality, understanding the balance between feminine and masculine and the importance of both and that balance. Mm-hmm. Breath work again. So a lot of times with breath work, you have your hand on your breast or on your heart and your other hand is usually placed on your womb and you're really connecting with your whole body. Just different things and eventually just more confident. Yeah. And I think confidence helps too, because you're trying to figure everything out at once and realizing that if you don't look after yourself, that you're not a good caregiver to others, so you have to be selfish. You have to look after yourself first.
And how has it impacted your intimate relationships?
When I think I had heard you say on one of your podcasts that sometimes you're just very lonely. You're surrounded by people that are very helpful, but it's a very lonely time.
Oh yeah, I said that when I was in the hospital.
Yes,
and that's why I do this podcast. Thank you for listening.
I think
it was that when I was in the hospital, and I'd have 60 people come to see me every day. But you can still feel so alone, right? Unless you're connecting with those who understand the depth of the hardship that you're going through.
Yeah, and even then they leave, right? I mean, so there's a voiceover on Instagram, and I don't know if it's Mel Robbins or who it is, but it's basically saying no one's coming to help you. You have to help yourself. Mm-hmm. So how were my relationships? I had a wonderful support system of friends and family. Absolutely. My husband's amazing. My boys are incredible. But ultimately it's up to me. It's so you do feel very lonely. And then, like I said, when I was seeking advice or not even advice, just experiences from other women, that which shall not be named was not talked about. Like, you'll figure it out. It's a phase of life kind of thing. And I thought, no way, there has to be somebody that wants to talk about this stuff. And there is now more. Again, I'm 8 years into my menopause journey, but it's more and more, but still not as spoken about as it should be. I mean, things are happening lately on television, that was an example of discrimination. But we have lots to contribute. And most women are living to age 85, 86. We're not going through menopause for 30 years from 51 to 86, pardon me. So we've got lots of wisdom, lots of experience, lots of creativity. This is a time to shine. So why is nobody talking about this? I love this time.
Right. And they're the easiest solutions. Like for me, I'll be really open, right? With intimate relationships, I was experiencing a lot of vaginal dryness, tearing, pain, like tears right through my vaginal wall, to be honest. Right. And a lot of discomfort. And then that diminishes your drive, right? But my drive was still high for other reasons. And I didn't think I could do anything about it because I couldn't take that synthetic estrogen, as we were talking about orally. But only recently, I've been in menopause for 10 years, and it's only over the last few years that I was suggested to do this estrogen cream locally, right? And then that solved literally all of my problems. It's just like these little things that can just make such a difference and improve and impact your quality of life drastically, right? But if we're not talking about it, we don't know.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the mark on that one for the intimacy part. But yes, agreed. And yes, again, I've only had one girlfriend actually have that conversation with me where we could actually share that information and talk to each other. Nobody else is talking about vaginal dryness or how that affects your intimacy at all. And again, it should be, because it's all part of it. It's all part of this phase.
And with my partner, like, I want to feel strong. I want to feel feminine. I don't want anyone to think that they're going to hurt me. Right. And you want to have that sense of empowerment in those experiences. Right. And so this simple tool of some estrogen cream literally changed my life years ago. And what a difference it's made. I feel incredibly blessed to have come across that. Right. But there are solutions out there, and you just have to be very vocal, because your quality of life and your happiness and your life satisfaction, right, all of it is really interdependent on these little tools that you can adopt along the way. So be vocal, be your best educator, be informed, right, and have a strong voice. Like Sylvia said, no one is coming to help. And so do you want to struggle with these things for another decade? No, be vocal, right? Take back your power in the ways that you're able.
Yeah, educate yourself, know your body. I'm a huge advocate for knowing your normal. What is your normal? Sometimes, in your case, you had no warning signs, you had nothing abnormal going on. But again, with regards to our breasts, like self-breast examination is so, so important. I found my lump. I was going for mammograms because I was high risk. It didn't show up on the mammograms. Right. I found my lump by doing self-breast examination monthly. It was small, so early detection is the key. And, know your body, know your normal, go to your doctor with questions that you're prepared to ask, because they may not know. Then you may need to go seek another, practitioner to help you with something, right?
And continue to be vocal, because if something's off, right? Even if your medical practitioner on the first time doesn't agree or doesn't feel it, right?
Or you're too young to be going through this.
Yes. Stay vocal, right? And I know for myself, when you said I had no symptoms, I didn't think I did at the time. I was the poster child for health and wellness. And yet, looking back on it, hindsight is always 20/20, right? And so being really in tune, especially as moms, we can put everyone else ahead. And I assumed I was just so tired because I was still nursing my youngest. He was 2. And I just assumed all moms were that tired, all young moms. I had 2 boys at the time, and go lifestyle, right? And I just assumed all young moms were that tired. But I remember my then 4-year-old, he's now 15, but my then 4-year-old would look up to me at like 3 p.m, and he would say, "Mommy, why do your eyes always look so tired now?" And I felt it, but I kind of diminished it and I disregarded it. Just like I did with this really weird rash that I had. I'm not really a rash girl, but all of a sudden I had this like really obtuse rash almost on the dorsal surfaces of my hands, like here. And that's not the best thing as a sports chiropractor. This rash also came over my eyelids. And then I had these night sweats, these crazy night sweats, super intense. But I had also had these night sweats in my early 20s, and they were investigated thoroughly, extensively, and all chalked up to hormonal changes with so much exercise that I was doing at the time. And so given I was still nursing my youngest son, right, I just assumed these night sweats had come back with hormonal changes again, right? And I was just exerting myself so much through these capacities. And so I didn't really think about it. I focused on my kids. I focused on everybody else but myself, right? And we can only take care of others if we prioritize our own health. I want to take it back a little bit too, because you talked a lot about the BRCA gene and getting tested and finding out if you have that mutation. And I want to share a little story of a really dear friend of mine on this very note. She had this mutation in her family, and it was recommended to her to be tested. And she too had tested positive. This was right after I was already admitted with cancer at the time. She had sent me this beautiful care package of like a music CD, all this, like, really just thoughtful stuff, right? And she was going for this test kind of right after all that. I was still in the hospital, and she tested positive, and she then had a mammogram after, and she had breast cancer in both of her breasts at that time. And she only found it again because she went through this testing process. And she's fine. She thrives now today. She's an amazing mama, and she's absolutely incredible. She and I are the same age. Then you take her brother, who didn't want to get tested, right? He just didn't want to know, as a lot of us do. They just don't want to have something on their mind to worry about. And I see that. But at the same time, knowledge is power. And it doesn't mean that just because we have this gene, right, this mutation, it doesn't mean that we're going to die from cancer. It means that we can empower ourselves proactively with the steps like you yourself did, Sylvia, right? And I really recommend all people to get tested, because devastatingly, Jenna, this amazing friend who I adore dearly, she lost her brother. He did not get tested, and he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And by the time he had raised it, a lot of men don't talk about those symptoms. He was a young man, and he was a single father and living life to the fullest. He wasn't discussing some of the symptoms he was having, and he kind of downplayed them, thinking none of them were related, as we all do. I didn't think my rash was related to my fatigue, and I didn't think my fatigue was related, to the night sweats. But hindsight's like, oh my gosh, it's like all these lights are blaring. Like, Erica, how did you miss this? Right? And he devastatingly died. I think it was 2 weeks after, he was diagnosed. There was no chance. And I just really say, please take this message to heart. Get tested and use that knowledge, use that information as your power to equip yourself, to empower yourself, and to inspire your health yourself to a better state of health and wellness all around, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Be prepared, not scared, right?
Be prepared, not scared.
You have that information. It is a Pandora's box. You're opening it up. You can't shove it back in. But then what are you going to do with this information? It's like anything in life. Life is full of ups and downs. It's how you process that information and how you hang on to it.
Well,
right?
And on that note, I always too say, prepare for the worst and expect the best, right? Because people are always telling me, oh gosh, you just knew you were going to survive. And I'm like, no. Like, I wrote letters to my kids when I had this 2-month terminal prognosis. I would have been foolish to not go through that process, and my kids turned 20 and they're like, what? She didn't write me a letter because she thought she was just going to beat it, And I think having that realistic, optimist approach is really important. But at the same time, if I didn't honor that fire-breathing dragon of cancer, I wouldn't have risen on the other side with the accountability factor that I needed to do, to take a good hard look at my life, right? And to change all of those factors that I needed to change in my life that I could take control of. I couldn't take control of this monster of cancer,
right?
But I could take control of a lot of the factors in my life, that would lead to a better state of health and wellness overall. And that's what I chose to focus on. But without preparing for the worst, we don't rise enough sufficiently on the other side, right? And I assure you, I was never thinking I was ever going to get cancer at the age of 35. I was the poster child. I was not prepared.
Yeah.
The world was pulled out from me, from under my feet within seconds. I was blindsided, right? I never want to go through that again. So I always prepare, and yet I always expect and fight for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
You to me, Dr. Harris, are so inspirational. I mean, again, when I was diagnosed with cancer, like you said, nobody wants to hear those words. And your story has been just phenomenal, just so inspirational and upbeat and positive, but realistic. Like you said, like, this is what's happening. This is how I'm going to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we all get today, right? And I always say, if we're not given tomorrow, how would you live today differently?
Yeah.
And live that life today. How would you want to be remembered tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
if tomorrow doesn't come? Let that be the way you live your life today. I want to be remembered as this fiercely loving, passionate mama bear who lived life to the fullest and who served others in every way she could.
Yeah.
Who was encircled with love. And so I live my life like that today. And I think we all should. It would really lead to a life of greater levels of happiness and health all around, and wellness and joy, inner joy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, I've slowed down a lot.
Yes.
I was on the go. I always had a full-time job and a couple of side gigs.
Yes.
I used to be a CPR instructor for 15 years, but I had a full-time human resource management position, and, on and on and on. And I have 2 boys as well with my husband, and hockey, baseball, soccer, la, la, la. Like, you just go. Like, that's the time of your life that you go. And, life gives us lessons and life gives us blessings. And sometimes in all that muck, you don't realize it. But you have to take the time to enjoy those small moments. And I'm soaking it all in right now. The other day, I was watching a bluebird chase a squirrel in my backyard, and I was just killing myself laughing. Like, I thought, I never would have stopped for 5 minutes to watch that, and
right.
Nature is just beautiful. Water is beautiful. Like, my garden is beautiful. Like, everything is just, different set of eyes for sure.
Yeah. No, I started taking photos, and I still post these now. Like, when I was sick, I started taking these close-up photos of flowers, and I would just record the waves rolling in at the water, and I would just be so moved by these things.
Nature is so therapeutic. It's
these simple pleasures, right? That we can just so easily overlook when we're so busy en route to go to what's next.
Yes.
We forget to enjoy the right now.
Yeah.
Sylvia, are there any last words of wisdom that you can share with my audience of risers and thrivers?
Words of wisdom. Enjoy the season that you're in. We as women are always in different seasons of life, and whatever season you're in right now, whether you're a young maiden or a new mama, or you're birthing a career, or you're in, menopause, enjoy the season of life that you're in, and take time to enjoy the little moments. But in the meantime, know your body, know you're normal, empower yourself, and educate yourself. Never stop.
Be educated and be your own hero, right?
Yes.
Great messages. Thank you for being with us here today, Sylvia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, risers and thrivers, we hope you've enjoyed this one. We just launched our last show with Rachel. She talked all about her childhood trauma, her abusive relationships, life as a single mom of 5 children, starting with a teenage pregnancy. Be inspired. She is an inspirational force. She is a powerhouse. You can access that show or all of the episodes on any of your favorite streaming platforms at risetoday.com, or even on YouTube. Now, we don't really focus on YouTube much here, but YouTube at Dr. Erica Harris, and we're going to put some more effort into that YouTube channel soon. Anyhow, all the best, risers and thrivers. We can't wait to see you next time. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Bye.